Hello, and welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. This is the final episode for 2020. So it's just me here today. I have no guest. I'm here. I'm going to share a little bit about what's on my heart. I will be going into a little bit of research that I've personally been doing, the near-death experience or the likely near-death experience of Edgar Cayce. He died quite some time ago, quite some years ago, but the work that he did in his lifetime has made such an impact, and there's a lot of great stuff that's come out of his life and the work that he invested into. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about his experience, and also just to say a huge thank you to our supporters, let you know what's coming up next year, where I see the show going, and like I say, I'm just going to be here chatting with a few things on my heart. So 2020, what a year. Who could have imagined? A year ago, I could not have imagined that this would have been what we had. I feel very lucky to be in New Zealand, where the impact of COVID hasn't been quite so much as it has been overseas. I've had a lot of correspondence with my listeners, with my family, with guests, with friends, and it seems that 2020 has been a year for everyone. It's been very unusual, it's been very challenging, it's been a great time of learning, of letting go, of picking new things up. And I know that when it comes to December 31st this year, I'm going to be very happy to watch this year go behind, say goodbye to 2020. New Year's Day is a very significant time for me personally. It's the most important day of the year for me. We have this beautiful family tradition, which I possibly enforced onto the family, but it's picked up, and now it's what we do every January 1st, is we get up before the sun. So most people will be partying, they'll be saying goodbye to the year, staying up late to welcome the year in. I would be quite happy to go to bed at 9 o'clock the night before January 1st, and then get up really early around 4:35, get up and watch the sun come up and welcome in the newness, the freshness. It's a time of saying thank you and goodbye to everything that we've had for the previous year, and then really embracing, I guess, the opportunity and the freshness of that new year coming in. So if you're anything like me, you're probably quite looking forward to having that happen. I know it's been a really tough year. I'd like to focus on the positives that have come out of this year though. So for me here in New Zealand, I've seen a lot of people coming together. I've seen a lot of people collaborating, families being forced to pause, which has its good parts and its bad parts, and I'm aware of that. But people creating more connections. So they're getting to know each other again, because we've all been racing around doing our thing with our head in our work or whatever it is that we do. And trust me, I'm guilty of that because I love doing this work. But we've been so busy that we haven't even been able to acknowledge or see the people that are right beside us. Often the most important people in our lives are the ones that get neglected. And over 2020, when we've been forced into lockdowns, when we've been forced into these difficult situations, I've seen some good things happen. I've seen people reconnect. I've seen family members laughing, having fun, getting outdoors, losing weight, being active again, deciding what they want to focus on, which has been, for me, a really good thing. And I'm aware there are some really awful things as well, but I'd like to choose to focus on some of the positive as we come to the end of the year. It's also been 1 year into the Let's Talk Near Death podcast VIP group. So that was started up December last year. And I would love to thank every single individual who has been a part of that. Your support has meant so much to me, and I've loved getting to know you better, love the connection, our support calls, our VIP calls. There are so many people I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank in particular Stuart, who is one of our super supporters, who pays every month to join the group at the highest tier possible. He really supports the show. Stuart, I've loved to see you. I've loved seeing you on the calls. I've loved having you a part of that group, and very much a heartfelt thanks. We've got people like Jess, like Richard, like Charlotte, like Sanjay, like Miriam, Lorianne, Russell, Scott, Thomas, Karen, Lonnie. You were here for a little while. I want to say thank you to you, because your texts encouraged me, your messages to me encouraged me. There are so many people who have been supporting the show this year, and the show wouldn't go on without your support. So I do thank you for that. And I look forward to what we're going to be achieving next year, what we're going to do. I'm trying to tweak the group at the moment, find out what's best for everybody. However, I know that you've tuned in because you want to hear about a near-death experience. You don't want to hear from me so much. The near-death experience that I've chosen to chat to you about today, as I mentioned, was Edgar Cayce. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because this year, many people had the opportunity to take up new things, to research things, to learn new things. And one of the things, I woke up with this overwhelming feeling that I needed to study about Akashic records. And I thought, what? That's a bit weird. I'd heard about them. I wasn't really fully engaged with them or anything like that. And so within hours, like this was just burning in me, within hours, I started to study. I signed up for a couple of courses and it's been all go. And I'm coming to the end of my training now, which is super exciting. And I've been learning all about the Akashic records, what they are, how they work, and also learning how to be a practitioner to be able to read these records for people. So the Akashic records are all about some people would call them the book of life. That's, I believe, how they're referred to in the Bible. It's a record of all of our life. So when people have a life review in a near-death experience, they often talk about how they saw their life, they experienced their life. Some see past lives, some see future lives. I have a belief that when we're having a life review, we're tapping into our records. So it's a record of everything we have ever done, every decision, every thought, every interaction, everything. Obviously, they're quite big records, quite big books, and we all have them. And the way that we understand our life really reflects how we can live. So I talk about death and regret and dying and near-death experiences, and some people might perceive that as being quite negative. But actually, one of the reasons I do that is because I'm really passionate that we live life to the full and that we squeeze the juice out of this life. There's so many good things available to us. And while I talk about these other topics, it's almost like they're the same thing, but the reverse side of it. So if you imagine a coin, you've got your heads, you've got your tails, life on one side, death on the other side. Near-death experiences are maybe somewhere in between on the side of the coin. And I just want us to live satisfying, full lives. Okay, so on to the near-death experience, or the likely near-death experience of Edgar Cayce. So what I'm about to share with you is a compilation of the research that I've done. It is referencing to articles that I've learned within my research materials, within my course program. It is also websites that I've looked at, places like Wikipedia, and also information from the Edgar Cayce Foundation, the Association for Research and Enlightenment. So big combination there. I pulled it together. There are probably quite some details missing. It's not clear the full experience because it did happen quite some time ago and Edgar Cayce was quite young at the time of his near-death experience. So take what you want out of it. Edgar Cayce was born in 1877 and he died in 1945. He is known today, he was often called the sleeping prophet or the father of holistic medicine. The reason he was called the sleeping prophet is because he would lie down in a trance-like state on a couch and he would be able to give readings and he would be able to connect with beings. He had very much psychic abilities and he got that reference because he spent quite some time giving these readings lying in this state on his couch. So at age around about 5, somewhere between 5 and 10, I'm not 100% sure on the age, but he was out fishing. So Edgar's father said that he was an outdoors boy. He loved to be outside. One day he went fishing. And I assume that this was probably quite a common thing to do for a young child back in those days. He had his rod, he had his bucket, and off he went. Where he went to his fishing spot, there had been some torrential rain. And so his normal pond that he would fish in or fish from was flooded. And the flooding had come up over and it had spilled out over onto the grass, I suppose, onto the bank area. And there was some fish up there, which made it very easy to go and get the fish without having to go through all of the work of doing the fishing itself. But what Edgar probably didn't notice is that there was the shallow part where he could wade through the water with his pole. And then suddenly at some point there was going to be a drop where it went into the actual pond itself. So Edgar waded in, he was going to get some fish and then drop, I assume that's what happened, and Edgar drowned. Luckily, or actually maybe it was just divine intervention, we won't really know, somebody was coming past. So they were coming past and they saw the fishing rod, they saw a hat bobbing on the water, the overflow of the pond, quickly put two and two together and realized that maybe someone had drowned. So they went in, waded in, very aware of the edge, and pulled out Edgar Cayce. Now remember, he was only young, so he was probably quite easy to pull out. Took him over to the bankside, did resuscitation, got the water out of his lungs, I assume, and brought him back to life. Now, it was noted that he was dead. He often referred to the time that he died and was resuscitated back to life. He then was taken home to his family. So he had this experience, he went home, and it's noted that he was telling some things to his mother that concerned her about his experience. So there's no proof that Edgar had a near-death experience. However, in those days, they certainly weren't something you talked about. They weren't a thing. Before Raymond Moody's time, before coining the phrase a near-death experience. So from that day on, things started to change for Edgar. He became very, very interested in the Bible. He requested a Bible and he became obsessed with studying it, researching it, and understanding all of the text in the Bible. He also had invisible friends. So a lot of kids do have invisible friends. I have my own theories around that, but he had these invisible friends, but he said that he could connect with his late grandfather. So he would spend time with his invisible friends. He'd talk to his late grandfather. Not the most normal life, I suppose, for a 5-10-year-old child. Move on a little bit. He's 13 years old and he goes out into the garden and he's met by an angel. Again, just another typical day, I suppose. The angel comes and communicates with him. That's as much information as I could find. I don't know what the angel said. I don't know what happened there. But then a little bit later, when he was 13 years of age, he was in school. So in 1890, Edgar's in school and he's feeling really tired. He's feeling like it's a bit tough. He's struggling with his learning materials. And he hears the voice of the angel. And the angel's saying to him for him to lie his head on the books. Now, if you're in school, you're really tired, you've got an angelic voice telling you to lay your head on your books, you're probably going to do that. I would. So he lies down, he puts his head on the books, and then he suddenly has all of the information in the books. He's absorbed it all, and it's like he knows it. With no study, with no research, without spending time in those books, he understands all that information. I would love that. I love books. I love learning, researching. There's probably a downside to that. I'm very aware that there quite possibly is, but wow, what an experience. So from that point on, he learned that he could do that. So Edgar Cayce absorbed a lot of information. He had his invisible friends. He was communicating with his late grandfather. He had the angel, and he had this ability to absorb information very easily. He then, as an adult, I guess some time passed, maybe he shut it down. I've got my own theory around that as well as to why young children see spirits or connect with other dimensions, other world, other beings, and then at a certain age, it doesn't happen anymore. So anyway, he went through his life, and then as an adult, he started to see his invisible friends again. He started to connect with them, and he had some beautiful psychic abilities. He had these gifts, which are very, very similar to the gifts that we hear about today that come through from a near-death experience. So he then got to the point where he learned that if he could lie on a couch and go into a trance-like state, he would imagine this beautiful white light. And when the white light came, or when he was in this white light, he could then refer to the Book of Life, which is known as the Akashic records. So very interesting idea. And then people started to request readings from him. So he was able to go into this trance-like state, tap into the Akashic records or the Book of Life or whatever it is that you want to call it, and understand different things. He could ask questions about the person's life. He could understand direction, what was going to happen, how they needed to tweak things, how their relationships, I guess, entwined with different people in their lives. And this became something that he did quite often. The demand grew more and more and more until he was spending much of his days lying on this couch in a trance-like state, giving readings to people as they requested them, which is how he got his name, the Sleeping Prophet. And so he is known as one of the forefathers of this, who made a massive impact in the world from giving these readings, changing many, many lives, and also from the amazing gifts that he had. He would continue to do this until eventually, I guess, the demand grew so much, the workload grew so much, because he was one of the very few people that did this early on, one of the forefathers. He then had strain on his body, and in September of 1944, when he was 67 years old, he had a stroke. Now, he didn't die until January the 3rd the following year. And so a little bit of time there where he took time out to try and recover and get some refuge from that, but his body did not recover as we would hope. And he did pass away on January the 3rd, 1945. He'd had a very amazing life, done many, many things. He was with his wife. His wife Gertrude died 3 months after him. And he has been known as this forefather and this person who did amazing work in the spiritual realm back in those early days. Now, he was criticized, especially as somebody who was so interested in the Bible and had this amazing love for God. And yet some of the things that he was doing were perceived as not being of God. So very interesting. I can imagine there were a lot of different levels in his life going on there. But his gifts are very interesting, and I've been learning all about his life. Well, I've just shared with you what I've been learning about his life and about how we can tap into the Akashic records. So this year, 2020, is when I have been focusing on learning more about them. I woke up one day with this burning obsession. I need to go and study about Akashic records. So I've done that. I have completed some courses. I'm now in the final stages of my practical thing to become a practitioner in the Akashic records, which means that I'm looking for people to give readings to. And I really hope that the work that I felt so impressed to do is going to help more and more people, which is how I ended up studying this, because obviously he was one of the foundation stories of Akashic records and in my research materials for my course. So very, very exciting. I love this. I'm going to be doing some more research around people that have had near-death experiences, that have died previously, who maybe we didn't hear about, we don't hear about these days. There's new ones coming all the time. People say, is it on the influx? I don't think so. I think it's now that we have the technology, the resources, and it's a more appreciated topic that we can talk about, that more stories are coming out. So we are going into the Christmas break. I would encourage you to go back to some of my early podcasts. Now, I say that a little bit nervous saying that, because they probably weren't the highest quality. They probably weren't exactly what I was going for. That's okay. The stories within them remain the same. So over the Christmas break, rather than feeling frustrated that there aren't any episodes, go back over some of the early ones, because I think there's so much value in gold. And some of those guests I still connect with today. They're absolutely amazing. They've got so much to share with the world. And like I say, their experience hasn't changed just because now I've been doing this for a couple of years. In 2021, the VIP group is going to continue. I would love more supporters. I would love more interaction, more conversation to be taking place. Send me the people that you want me to interview. Send me guest names. There are so many experiences out there, and I want to be adding as much value as I possibly can. So that's going to be something that I'm focused on quite a lot for 2021. I also want to say a huge thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in and for helping me to get this conversation out there. You may have listened to my earlier episode. This year, I shared my own personal experience for the very first time publicly like this. That took me quite some time to do. And the listeners, thank you for the, you know who you are, who prodded me to do that, because I was quite happy to be on this side of the microphone, not talking about anything specifically about me. I did share that. That was episode 1 of 2020. So come a really, really long way in doing this. I want to add as much value as I can. I want to get this conversation out there. I couldn't do it without your support. So everybody who tunes in, thank you so much. I appreciate you. We will be back. It'll be late January. We've got our summer holidays coming up, being down in New Zealand here. So our big holidays where all the schools break up, we have, gosh, my daughter's off school for like 10 weeks or something, 9 weeks. I think it's 10, a really long time anyway. So what I love to do is be really present for my family if I can be. And so I'm going to take a bit of a break, and then we'll be back late January. I'll probably start a few weeks before she goes back to school, because it will just be releasing these episodes. It would be amazing to connect with you all. I love to hear from you. I love to get your emails. I love to get your messages. There is the Facebook page. There is an email list. I mail my listeners weekly with the episode updates. If you want to be on that, simply just email me, find me, leave a comment or something. Find a way to get in touch with me. It's pretty easy to do. Or you can just email kirsty@letstalkneardeath.com with your email address and ask to be on that newsletter list. And I'm very happy to put you on there so that you get the weekly updates and understand all the things that I do. I often have offers for my listeners, things like free Akashic readings. This year I did free funerals, living funerals. So I'm a registered funeral celebrant. Whilst I don't practice and deliver funerals themselves so much, I do like to write living funerals. So that's writing your funeral before you've died, because once you've died, it's too late to hear all of these beautiful words that people have, but also it's a great way to understand how people look at your life, what you'll be remembered for, how people will acknowledge the life that you lived. And I think when we look at that, I think when we embrace death, then we can actually live much better, fuller lives. So I'm aware I have just talked a whole lot. Like I say, I kind of can do that. I hope that you enjoyed the near-death experience research that I've done around Edgar Cayce's life. If you'd like to know more about the Akashic readings, let me know. If you'd like to jump on the list to hear about when that service is available, let me know. If you want to get on the mailing list, let me know. If you have guest requests, let me know. Or if you have Q&A or anything that I can do to serve you to make this conversation bigger and better, that would be amazing. Blessings to you all. I can't do it without you. What a year. Let's move into 2021, and I look forward to joining you again soon.